What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to another weekly edition of the Barnhill Brothers Combat Show.
Welcome.
Nick, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm great. A little tired from jiu-jitsu this morning, but ready for another round tonight.
That was great, by the way. My first time at Gracie Baja Houston. It's shout out to them. That was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. They're the best.
They've had a lot of big names come through there, which I didn't realize until I was there today.
Some of the best.
Shevchenko. I know they've got a few people in Bellator, several in the UFC, and then on top of that, obviously some killer gi jiu-jitsu players.
Some of the best in the world, male and female. They're all monsters over there.
Absolutely,
and they train responsibly, but you also get a lot better, and you're always matched up with different body types and different belt levels, and it makes you just an all-around good fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we'll be training there a lot more.
Speaking of all-around good fighters, though, the only news to talk about this week, in my opinion, is what just happened at UFC 246. We got Conor McGregor with a stunning comeback performance.
Conor McGregor is back, and he's better than ever.
Yeah.
One thing I love about Conor, and he said this in the build-up to the fight, is that he wants to get back to the place where he's creating magic, and the word he specifically used was magic. I want to create magic in the octagon again. I want to give you guys those memorable moments. And one thing about Conor is, as much as there is posturing and selling of a fight and the out of the octagon theatrics that have built him to being have been a major part in him becoming the superstar that he is, one thing that he also is that you can't take away from him is a major student of the game.
Yeah. And
even in his performances where he's fallen short, he's always come out and done something different, shown us a little bit of a different look. And this time was no different.
Yeah. It proves that he's always looking to progress, and that's the name of martial arts, is never being like complacent with where you're at, always trying to evolve your game. Everybody has to work on their punches. Everybody has to work on their grappling, their kicking. It's a never-ending game. You never reach the pinnacle. There's always improvements to be made. Yeah. I think, he said he still has a ways to go, but I mean, that was about as clean as a performance as you can get. If you go down to the stats, he threw 20 shots. He landed 19 of them. I know everybody's already talking about that. But also, he blocked the one and only shot that Cowboy threw, which was a kick.
And then immediately answered with the head kick that was the beginning of the end.
Right.
One thing that I love about Conor is his unpredictability. And the thing about that is everybody said, what was the narrative going into the fight? One was that Conor was probably going to win this fight. And I understand that Cowboy has he's won 4 of his last 10. Doesn't matter. He's still Cowboy Cerrone, and he still deserved to be in there, and he can still knock anybody out on a given night.
Yeah.
But the thing about it that I was really amazed by was that, the narrative was Conor's going to either win by just a barrage of volume
early
punches,
knockout.
early, just a clean left hand that starches him. Nobody in their right mind said that Conor McGregor was winning that fight by a head kick.
Yeah.
If somebody was winning that fight by a head kick, it was Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah, he owns that record.
That's it. And then Conor even said after the fight, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go get a head kick knockout against the guy who's had the most head kick knockouts in UFC history.
Yeah.
Amazing performance by Conor. It's safe to say he's back. I think we can say he's better than ever. It's hard to say that because we only saw 40 seconds of him, but it's hard not to say that because those 40 seconds were an absolute domination of a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I mean, he looked great. 170 seems to be all right for him. I still have a lot of questions for him fighting at 170. I think, he ate breakfast the morning before and was hydrating before he stepped on the scales. So he is more suited for 155.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to see, another question I have is, how's his gas tank at 170 these days? We know, he turned and ran from Nate a couple of times when he was fighting at welterweight, even though he came in a little under. So I think everybody knows carrying more weight is harder.
Sure.
If you go do any sort of exercise and then add 10 or 15 pounds to it, it's going to make it harder. So fighting's no different. And I think it was smart to take this fight at 170 because I think Cowboy and Conor were both able to focus on the skills where both of them kind of needed that. I mean, neither of them have been able to put a win in the column in a long time. Cowboy didn't have to worry about cutting weight, which it's a little bit tougher for him to make 55 than Conor. And Conor, I think it's smart because, like he said, he's in this season of 2020, so he wants to fight multiple times a year. And the one thing in fighting that will hold you back is the cutting weight that amount of times. It's easier to fight 4 times in a year than it is to cut weight 4 times.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things Conor said. Conor full-heartedly believes that he's fighting for the 155 belt in April. He has not said that he wants to be an alternate for this fight. He has gone one step further and said that he does not believe that this fight is going to happen and that he's going to be ready to step in. So that was one of the big factors why he didn't want to do a weight cut, because if what he believes is actually true and he is going to turn around and fight for the 155 belt in April, it would not be a smart move on his part to do 2 major weight cuts back to back like that. Right. So good strategy, good long game strategy. And that's what we've seen from Conor since the beginning. He's always had and always will have a long game strategy. Yeah. So and if that does happen, which don't knock the Barnhill sign over, but knock on wood that is not the case, because as much of a Conor fan as I am, I do desperately want to see Tony Ferguson and Khabib fight.
I'd love to see that. And, it's so funny because we're so greedy as fight fans. Everybody's guilty of this. He puts on this masterful performance. He makes his return, and him and Cowboy do wonderful business for the UFC, give the fans exactly what they wanted to see, even though it was short-lived. It was still the cherry on top of what was a little bit of an underwhelming card. There was still some good fights on it, but for the most part, it was a little bit top-heavy, and everything else kind of just filled places. But how greedy are we where he's not even done, hugging his family, doing Joe Rogan's speech, where we want to know who he's fighting next.
Yep.
And there's so many options. And the cool thing about Conor is there's no easy fight for him left in his UFC career or in his martial arts career. Whether it's boxing, whether it's MMA, there's none easy ones. So it's not like he's taking an easy way out by picking or choosing anybody. He's got Murderer's Row in front of him, and he has to select somebody. And he's
like a pick your poison type of scenario.
Right. Yeah, you've got your Masvidal, you've got your Usman, who, both of those guys need to understand that Conor's a real threat after seeing that last performance. I mean, I don't know if he'd come in as the favorite. I think he actually did come in Vegas on the betting side
of the equation.
Side. And he's the underdog against Masvidal already, which naturally you would think that's probably the case. But he's got down at 55 Khabib, Tony, the winner of that, who I think he will probably get. But him staying active means he's going to have to fight again before halfway through this year's over.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because I agree with that 100%. Mm-hmm. I think we should take Conor at his word. He is a man of his word after all, and he did say that this is a 2020 season for him. Right. However, I did watch the post-fight press conference.
How could you not?
Dana White said that in his opinion, there's 2 fights to make, and it's very clear to him. One is Conor sitting out and taking on the winner of Tony and Khabib and putting George Masvidal against Kamaru Usman for the 170 strap. And Dana White was pretty firm in his stance that there really was no logical other fight that you would do in the interim, because Conor just came back. He just solidified himself with a win in spectacular fashion over a Hall of Famer in Cowboy Cerrone. And now Masvidal is bigger than ever, and Kamaru Usman needs a dance partner. I don't necessarily see it that way. How do you see it?
There's a lot of moving parts, and what everybody always says is, the fighters don't have any leverage in this game. And for the most part, they're right when they say that.
Unless your name's Conor McGregor.
But even Conor doesn't have a ton of leverage. But one aspect of leverage that most fighters do have is, and it's one of those things that works well for the company, works well for Dana and them, is if you want to be active and that's what you're pushing at them, then they'll let you fight. If they're like, if you demand certain things and you ask for, they're 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get them.
Sure.
But if all you're demanding is that you want to be active, and it just so happens that you're the number one draw in all the sports history, you're going to get that. At least point of leverage to work in your favor.
I see it being very hard for Dana to turn down $1 million+ pay-per-view buy with Masvidal.
Right.
And quite frankly, and this is something that not anybody is talking about, and I see this as being a very long shot. I don't see this as how it's playing out. But let's say George gets in there with Conor and he gets the jump on him in a spectacular fight. That doesn't necessarily do away with the huge Khabib fight. Here's something nobody's thinking about. What if Masvidal knocks out Conor McGregor and then calls out Khabib and says, I'm going back down to 155, by the way, where I spent the majority of my career. Now, I don't think that's a good matchup for Masvidal, but you can see that still being a mega fight. I think that it seemed to me that Dana was a bit concerned that he didn't want, because Conor just came back, he just solidified himself. He just did exactly what it is that he needed to do to set up a mega biggest fight in UFC history against Khabib, that he doesn't want to do anything that could potentially derail that. And I understand it from that point of view, but I still think that we see Conor in there probably UFC fight week in Vegas in the summertime against Masvidal.
Yeah, that's one of those things where people, you can't shelf your number one guy, and it doesn't make sense to, especially because he came off 40 seconds, so he's looking for some activity. People, for some reason, there's this notion that, if Conor should fight Khabib later this year, if Tony beats Khabib, which I don't think anybody's giving Tony the credit that Tony deserves. If there's anybody on that roster that can make 155 pounds that has a damn good shot at beating Khabib, it's Tony Ferguson. And the other thing is, Tony Ferguson hasn't had an opponent leave a fight against him without having a 120-day suspension for medical clearance and all that stuff, and probably ever. Just think about the war that Khabib and Tony are going to have. I'm fingers crossed it happens. I hope it does. I think 5th time's a charm. They're going to be able to put the show on for the people, and it's going to move the lightweight division in the direction it needs to move. But mark my words, both of those guys are going to leave that fight torn up. They're both. They might not make the post-fight press conference because they're both going to be torn up and heading straight to the emergency room. Tony Ferguson doesn't let up any. Even if Khabib does take him down every time he shoots, Tony's nasty on the bottom with his elbows, and he'll probably knee you from down there, and he's active with his striking from down there. Also, his submissions are crazy.
If there's a guy that likes to be on the bottom more than Olenek, it's Tony Ferguson.
Tony.
Think about even the Kevin Lee fight. He is getting, for all intents and purposes, the early part of that fight, he was getting kind of manhandled.
Yeah.
Gets on the ground, in the guard position and finishes with a triangle of a very, very game grappler. And don't think that Tony's not doing damage from the guard. Tony's cutting your face up with elbows.
Right.
He's very, very active from the guard. So even if Khabib does take him down and hold him there, Khabib's face is still going to be mangled because Tony can do a heck of a lot of damage from that position.
Yeah. I think if I could just project who I see Conor fighting for the remainder of 2020, his season, I think it starts off with Masvidal anytime between April, which they'll probably push it to International Fight Week is what I'm guessing. And then if he can get a quick turnaround in there, or, if he has to wait that long, it'll probably be one more fight at the end of the year. It's the winner of Tony versus Khabib. Yeah. And I'm thinking he might be hoping and praying a little bit that Tony Ferguson wins that fight. I know he wants the Khabib fight, and that's not the rematch with Khabib's not going anywhere. But from a striking and just a martial arts standpoint, skill for skill, I think Conor stands a better chance to beat Tony Ferguson than he does to beat Khabib. Tony is a monster everywhere. but he also is reckless, and he will get in a firefight, and he'll give the people what they want to see, unlike a Khabib or an Usman who's going to just wrestle you down to the ground and win off points. Yeah. Probably take you all 5 rounds and then just kind of get their hand raised at the end. Yeah. Tony versus Conor would quite possibly be one of the most entertaining fights
Which is
ever.
Exactly my point as to why you just have to – you can't try to make this the WWE and try to predict the future and say this fight's going to happen and it's probably going to be around here. You can have an idea of what you might like, but the reality is that these narratives paint themselves in such a way that's way better than anybody could even, try to think about Masvidal, for example. Right. Nobody saw him coming. Nate Diaz, beating Michael Johnson and getting on the mic and calling out Conor McGregor out of the blue. Then
it made sense. There's no better fight for Conor than Nate Diaz.
And it's oh my God, how did I not see that? It took the fighter actually opening my eyes and realizing it. So that said, I think carry on with the season. I think Conor needs to go in there and fight Masvidal sometime in the summer. See what happens with Tony and Khabib. Obviously, be ready for that. Should that open up, he should slide in. But I think this fight's going to happen this time. So, do the Masvidal fight over the summer, and then should he get the jump on Masvidal, which I personally thought was a little far fetched on the 17th of January. I don't so much think it's very far fetched now. To believe that Conor could actually be competitive and beat Masvidal. Yeah. And then he's...
I think that's a great fight. I think the pre-fight antics would be some of the best. And I think it would be a striking contest. And they're both unpredictable. They're both very high energy. And what's the word I'm looking for? They're
explosive.
Explosive. That's exactly the word I'm looking for. They would... I don't think that one goes past 3 rounds.
And that's a matchmaker's dream. That is a war between 2 guys who, by the time they get in there, will not like each other.
Right.
Conor said no bad blood was spilled in the Cowboy fight. The Masvidal fight, there's some bad blood because those two, their characters and the way they
opposites.
can, they will not like each other by the time this is.
And even if they just sell it that way, I don't think Conor will ever, especially with the new leaf that he's kind of turned, will ever have a vendetta or a grudge against a fighter like Khabib again. I just don't think that one got a little bit.
It got way
nasty.
Too personal.
It got rough.
Yeah.
I think from now on we're gonna see vintage Conor sell the fights, and he's gonna turn it up, just like he did in his post-fight speech. But he's gonna keep it. It's business. It's strictly business.
This is Conor 2.0. We're witnessing the evolution of Conor McGregor.
Yeah, it's not vintage Conor. It's new Conor.
It's the best things of Conor, and so far, none of the worst. Hopefully, it stays that way. But
he said, in his early 20s, when he came across a lot of money and all that type of stuff, he would spend his money on things like watches and cars and things like that of that nature. And then he kind of found out about how LeBron James spends $1.5 million a year on his body alone. And he realized, I'm a top 10 athlete on the planet, just like LeBron is. Why am I not spending that kind of money on myself for those types of reasons? So instead of spending money on material things, he's kind of, I think, with having children and growing up, and now he's over 30, has realized it's more important to spend it on things that truly matter: healthy foods, healthy recovery systems,
investments that mature in value and don't diminish. And the other thing was, it's good to see Tony Robbins in his corner in there with him. Those two have kind of
that wasn't cheap.
Built such a little bit of a friendship. But if it's not cheap, but if anybody is leading Conor in the right direction as a man and also financially.
That's the guy.
He's the guy that rights the ship, and he's a beast. And I don't think a lot of MMA fans really know who he is, so we won't talk a whole lot about him. But
I think he played a major role in the resurgence of Conor and the new demeanor that he's carrying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we're going to have Conor Mania kind of lingering in the MMA news for the next few weeks and even months until the next thing comes out. I'd love to see an interview with him again. I'd love to see some stuff come out, some news. But until then, we can just enjoy what we got out of
Conor's
him.
back.
That was incredible.
And Emmett, like Conor, love Conor, hate Conor, or loathe Conor. MMA is better with Conor McGregor in it.
Well said. Well said. Well, there's a whole heap of other things happening in the early parts of this year. We've got UFC's kind of stacked.
I know I felt like we needed to get past this McGregor fight before like we knew there was other fights. You got the one here in Houston, and there's things going on in Bellator, but it's like, man, everything was just so log jammed with content around this Conor McGregor fight that now we can kind of breathe and like, okay, there are a lot of exciting things on the horizon. So.
I felt bad. I went and watched the fights and saw some of the TVs in there had boxing on. I just felt bad for the boxers that had to box on the same night Conor McGregor made his return, because I think the only people watching that were the people that were in the stands that bought the tickets before they announced the Conor fight. Yeah. So, there's the boxing heads, a small percentage, but fight fans across the board were tuned in to see what was going to happen with Conor. And then, no better dance partner than Cowboy. Gracious in defeat. It makes you want to cry when you see him all beaten up, raising his hat to Conor and his grandma. And you feel so bad for him. But if anybody can roll with the punches and roll with a loss like that, it's Cowboy.
He's a fan favorite. Yeah. And just quickly before we move on, one thing about Cowboy, and I've seen this narrative quite a bit on social media, and then I heard people saying it in the bar where I watched this fight, was that Cowboy threw that fight. There's not a more ridiculous narrative out there. Cowboy did not take a dive in that fight.
Even some MMA, even a UFC fighter in particular, said that this was like some boxing bullshit. This was definitely a fix, a job, and
those people have no idea what they're talking about. Cowboy Cerrone has solidified his position as a UFC Hall of Famer because he's proven himself to be the most game fighter in the whole sport. He came out there. Conor McGregor has a 91% knockout ratio. That's Deontay Wilder level knockout ratio
at
170 pounds, where he's not cut any weight. He's taken this camp extraordinarily seriously, and he head kicks you after those shoulder strikes and after a two that he came, just rushing out of the gate, almost like a Masvidal flying knee. Cowboy wanted to win that fight. Cowboy wanted to be in that fight. Cowboy tried to win that fight. And anybody that says that he took a dive, I would love to see them absorb that same head kick that Cowboy took and then continue to fight after the barrage of punches that ensued thereafter.
Yeah, he was getting multiple millions of dollars as is. So why does he need a few extra more to throw the fight?
He's got 30 fight of the night bonuses.
If they offered him that, he would laugh in their face and then show it to the world on social media that they tried to do that.
Yeah,
he's not that guy.
They're not. Yeah, that didn't happen. And by the way, he also is sponsored by Budweiser. He's making great money on that. They came out with the beer. I forget the slogan that they use, but basically he was the face of a production run of Budweiser. That just
live a life worth living.
Yeah, that just didn't happen. Cowboy wanted to be in there. He wanted to win that fight. Unfortunately, Conor McGregor was just the better man.
Yeah, it was game plan for Conor. It was Cowboy historically starts a little bit slow. Conor historically starts pretty fast.
Yeah,
and weathers down. So it made sense for Conor to come out of the gate, guns a-blazing, and he caught Cowboy kind of flat-footed. That's just the way it is.
That's how it goes. But shout out to Cowboy. And Cowboy, it doesn't matter. Cowboy can continue this game as long as he wants to, and everybody's going to tune in when Cowboy Cerrone's on the card.
That fat paycheck will give him some time to rest. Hopefully he takes a couple months and just enjoys time with his family. And then I'm sure we'll see him in there probably on International Fight Week.
Yeah.
But yeah, so other news, I should say, we got the Bellator card coming up this weekend.
Yeah, that's a good one. Our guy Juan Archuleta is going to be on the card.
The Spaniard.
Yeah, shout out Juan. We love you, man.
Yeah, best of luck in your fight, man. We're always rooting for you over here.
That's right. So you want to break that one down?
Well, yeah. So I pulled up the card because I figured it'd be best to not slide anybody, and Bellator came out with all the stops on this card.
Sure.
And so we'll start here. I don't really know this Ava Knight versus Emily King.
Okay.
But Ava Knight came from boxing, I think. She's 1-0 right now. She had to go through a fight to win in her MMA debut, but she did it. Anyways, I'm more excited for this one. Raymond Daniels. Raymond Daniels is known for having some of the best knockouts in striking history. Remember close to a year ago or 6 months ago, there was a viral punch that he did a jumping, spinning kick and then landed right in front of the guy and then just threw a hook. That
was Raymond. Okay, yeah. I thought that was him. I did not know for sure.
Out of the training lab, he's training with TJ Dillashaw and Juan Archuleta and those guys. I believe he dates Colby Northcutt, who's Sage Northcutt's sister. So they're eat, sleep, breathe fighting. Sure. And he's one of the best strikers in all of MMA. I know he's very new to MMA, actually, 1-1.
Okay.
So he's just dipping his toes into it, but the striking stuff, he's just next to none. Fantastic. So I don't honestly know who his opponent is. He doesn't have a picture here. If you want to check that out, that's his opponent. That's his opponent there.
He's fighting a ghost. He's
Jason King.
Come on, do better, Bellator.
Yeah, I'm sure he's a good guy. But and then after that one, we've got Sergio Pettis making his Bellator debut. Which,
Showtime Junior. Yeah. Mini Showtime.
Yeah, hopefully he can do a little better than his brother did this past weekend. I love the Pettis boys.
I do too. MMA is good with the Pettis brothers in it for sure.
Yeah. And he's a monster. I think probably 125 is where he was most comfortable. And then
he's gone up to 35 for Bellator, right?
Yeah. So I think the UFC did some cuts, and for some reason, or maybe they didn't even cut him, he just decided to sign with Bellator. But good for him. I'm excited to see him fight. Anytime the Showtime boys are on there, I'm in.
Who's he fighting?
He's fighting Alfred Kasashian or something like that.
I know him.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Pettis brothers, they put on a good show. Sergio, I feel like he was very young, when he was contending at 25, and I think he's kind of grown into his body a little bit. And he's at 35 now. I think he's going to make some waves in Bellator. I think Sergio Pettis is going to see his best days as a Bellator fighter.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited to see him. Then we got our boy Juan Archuleta.
That's right.
How can you forget? And this is all the main card. He's fighting Henry Corrales.
Yeah, that's a good fight. Yeah, both guys like to bang. Both guys have knockout ability.
Bang Muay Thai.
That's it.
But I hope Juan can get this win. It was tough seeing him lose to Pitbull. Yeah. But Pitbull's the champ, the double champ, the champ for a reason. He's a monster at 145 and a monster at 155.
One of the best ever, regardless of which promotion you're talking about. Right. He's up there with the best in the UFC as well.
Imagine seeing a Volkanovski versus Pitbull fight at 145.
I mean,
it would be a great fight.
Can we do a cross promotion?
They're the same size and stuff. So I think, he has to get credit for what he did. And Juan went all 5 rounds with him. So, you have to tip your hat to that. I'm just super excited to see it, man. When you know somebody on a personal level, then you're always
it does not get any nicer than Juan Archuleta.
Can't.
The thing about Juan is he's obviously an excellent wrestler, excellent grappler. He's got that pedigree. But one thing, as I've seen him fight and watched his career, his striking has become so dynamic. And I won't say it's like TJ Dillashaw. Obviously, they are trained both by Dwayne Ludwig, and that bang Muay Thai style is very effective and very lethal.
Right.
But he's even made it his own. Like, I see a lot of stuff that he does that's different, and he uses it as like these really dynamic strikes as setups for these trips and these takedowns. It's really pretty incredible, and he puts an amazing pace on, and he combines the grappling and the striking as well as anybody really in the game today, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that one.
Actually, Bellator, the co-main event and main event are fantastic fights.
Absolutely.
We got Caldwell and Borex in the tournament.
In the tournament, that's right. And
break that one down. Break that one down, and then we'll get to the main event.
Yeah, the main event, which I'm excited for. But I'm super excited for this this featherweight tournament. It's been really interesting to see how they did the selections to get the brackets, and then the fights that kind of were created by the fighters turned out to be great fights. You
Yeah.
know, there was they really evened the whole thing out, and styles were able to pick other styles that they thought favored them.
Very cool out of the box thing that Bellator did, by the way. They're doing a lot of that, which I got to give Bellator props for that.
And all the way down to the roster of the tournament. So they've got a lot of up and coming monsters that they're signing, and they're getting them early before the UFC gets them, and then they're kind of known as a UFC fighter that came over to Bellator, like Adam Borix, like AJ McKee, James Gallagher. All these guys are being known as Bellator original fighters, which is very cool, and I think it's smart that Bellator does that. And you've got a couple of undefeated monsters, AJ McKee and this Adam Borix guy. It's so interesting to see them competing with the Pitbulls and the Juan Archuletas and the guys who've been around for a long time. And these kids are young, but they still have enough experience. Some of them are 10-0, 14-0, stuff like that. And then you've got guys like Pitbull with 20-plus wins or whatever, and Juan Archuleta, who just came off 18-fight win streak. So it's cool to see how they're really pushing this next wave of fighters.
Yeah, and there's a few guys in Bellator right now, maybe this Borix guy included, that could be household names over the next couple of years.
For sure. And it makes sense to not just pull all your household names from the UFC if you're Bellator. It makes sense to kind of groom your own. And
Right, because it's almost seen, and obviously they pulled McDonald over when he was arguably still in his prime, but it is seen a little bit of that whole notion that, well, you pulled a post-prime so-and-so over to Bellator or Benson Henderson or whoever it may be.
People look at it as like leftovers.
And they needed to do that. They needed to do that to get to where they are. And now they have the capital, they have the name recognition, they're putting on mega shows, they're doing MSG. You know, it's a mega promotion now. So now they're able to go out and sign those young guys from the jump.
Yeah, and cater
which I think is really cool.
Yeah, cater their careers a little bit in their favor. They're not doing it like boxing where they're giving them a bunch of cans and then they're giving them hard fights, but they're giving them reasonable fights. They're going to build their experience in the right way. I think Scott Coker's doing a great job over there
for this fight. So does the young stallion Borix have enough to get past the veteran in Caldwell?
You know, Caldwell's a monster, but I've got Borix winning this fight, and I think he's actually going to finish Caldwell.
Is that right?
He's a monster. His wrestling's crazy. His striking is very sharp. I just think these young guys, like I was saying, they don't have as much experience as some, but they have enough to where they're a real threat, and they're in their athletic prime pretty much at these early 20 and mid-20 ages. I think it's going to be a great fight, though. And then they're capping the night off with the one and only, formerly known as the baddest woman on the planet, former UFC fighter, came on over to Bellator. That's Cris Cyborg.
Yeah, and she's going to be taking on Juila Budd.
Yeah.
That's a good fight.
Yeah, Juila Budd's no slouch.
Absolutely not. You know, the thing about Cyborg is the UFC 145 division was effectively created for her.
Right.
There was a long time where there was no competitor to Cyborg. As Chael Sonnen put it, if you are a female, you have a pulse, or you can fog a mirror, and you can weigh in at 145 pounds, and congratulations, you're the number one contender.
Right.
That narrative changed in a devastating way by the greatest when she ran into the greatest female fighter of all time in Amanda Nunez. That said, Cris Cyborg is the second baddest woman in the world.
Right. And you know, going into this fight, I'm assuming the only woman on the planet that can beat Cyborg is Amanda Nunez, and I think she beats her every time. And then if Valentina Shevchenko was a little bigger, she would probably be a threat. But what does that say if Juila Budd is able to get past Cyborg? You know, I would hate to see Cyborg for people to look at her as something less than what she is after being so scary for so long. it's so weird. Nobody wants to fight her. Then Amanda Nunez beats her, and everybody's down to fight. You know, it happens with all fighters. But people need to realize that she actually is a monster.
Oh, absolutely. What have you done for me lately is
The name of
major
MMA.
effect. That's the name of the MMA game. But that's Cyborg's a monster any day of the week.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. There's not really many girls for Amanda Nunez left over in the UFC.
Right.
Should Juila Budd get over on Cyborg, then in my opinion,
we need to see that fight.
There has never been more of a need or calling for a cross promotion between Bellator and the UFC than to see Juila Budd and Amanda Nunez, to see who actually, that's assuming she gets past Cyborg, which I don't think necessarily that she will. If she does, that would be that would be the most urgent need for a cross promotion fight of all time. But that said, I think Cyborg, she does get a little reckless sometimes, and Amanda Nunez has ungodly power, and Amanda Nunez is also very precise, which is the reason that I picked her to win that fight even before it happened. And that's because Amanda Nunez can pick her shots, especially with a reckless opponent, and she can pick shots that are strong enough to put other women down. That said, Juila Budd, she's a strong girl. She'll be in there fighting very hard. Don't think she has the same fight-changing power that Amanda has. So I think Cyborg gets it done. I think it goes on a couple of rounds. I think maybe late second, early third round, Cyborg will get it done just with an overwhelming power and barrage.
Yeah, I think she addresses some of the sloppiness in her striking that she had with Amanda, cleans it up a little bit, and then eventually the power just takes its toll.
Because, I mean, she's got crazy power as well.
Yeah. Well, that's all we've got for this weekend as far as Bellator goes. There's some other things going on, as always, in the fight game, but that pretty much does it for us this week. We're still riding off the Conor McGregor high, and
we're on that McGregor wave, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll through that for a while, but I'm excited for the fights. I hope you enjoy them. I know I'm going to, and thanks to everybody for watching. Thank you all so much.
By the way, guys, make sure you check us out on Friday because we're going to be in those hot saunas.
One of us.
And one of us is. I think it's me. I think I lost.
Did you lose? Yeah. We'll tally it up. Yeah. We'll tally it up and then make sure we've got the right person. We'll see,
but check back on Friday because one of us will be in the sauna. Both of us will be giving our predictions. And guys, if you like this content and you want to see us every week, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Peace.